Hello Play the Game, this is Rowan with my thoughts on Assassin's Creed, because now that I finally have some free time to myself, I thought I'd start making videos again, and to break my current impressive streak, I decided to not make it about Borderlands. So the details of Assassin's Creed Unity were revealed at E3, and personally I think it's looking to be a very, very good game. At one point I had pretty much given up all hope in the Assassin's Creed series after Assassin's Creed Revelations and Assassin's Creed 3 because honestly Revelations was just the most obvious filler game in a series I had ever seen. It barely added anything in terms of gameplay or storyline to the series. In fact, when you look at it in terms of storyline wise, the only revelation was that Lucy was a Templar the whole time. That's the only thing that added to the storyline. And that revelation was in a DLC. And after that came Assassin's Creed 3, which was just, I guess, had the most unlikable protagonist I'd ever seen in a game, to the point where at the end I was actually rooting for his father. I didn't like Connor or whatever his name was at all. It was the only Assassin's Creed game I couldn't actually finish the side missions because I couldn't stand him anymore. I just didn't like playing at him. But before you've all left the video for my rant, I really think Ubisoft turned the franchise around with Black Flag. I feel that they were finally confident enough to take the brand in different directions, because Black Flag just felt completely different to any other Assassin's Creed game. The whole ship mechanic, the whole open world, it just gave a whole new feel to the Assassin's Creed series. It still was Assassin's Creed, you know, the gameplay was at its core somewhat similar because you still had to go around assassinating people. There were side missions where you had to help other assassins, different jobs and contracts, but the whole ship mechanic was just a genius stroke of brilliance. I think actually Assassin's Creed 4 might be my favourite Assassin's Creed. It's either Black Flag or Assassin's Creed 2, because that was my first game, and whenever you come into a series like this, you always feel a bit of nostalgic, rose-tinted views on your first game in the series. It's in a similar way to how I always think World at War was one of the best Call of Duties, because that was the first one I played, and for other people it was Call of Duty 4. But back to Assassin's Creed. Black Flag, I just think it was such a brilliant stroke, because Ubisoft has shown that they didn't want Assassin's Creed to become the Call of Duty of open world games, because it was going that way for a while, okay? It was just bland game after bland game, but they turned it around and made a very different game to the Assassin's Creed series, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And if we're honest, they could have easily made another stroke, you know, as Assassin's Creed 2 innovated from Assassin's Creed 1, but then it spawned so many copycat games after that. They could have taken the whole ship mechanic, just brought it into a different era, and brought out a series of sequels that didn't really add much on their own, but piggybacked on its success. But they didn't. Assassin's Creed Unity is in a different setting. There's no indication that ships are any part at all, and they've just moved the series on to another standpoint, which is open worlds, that it's not one linear storyline with certain side missions that you go off to explore. It's like ever changing. All these events are happening at the same time, and it just looks like a really brilliant addition to the Assassin's Creed series. I love that Ubisoft has decided to turn it around and just continued in a very, very innovative way, and I'm really looking forward to it. The one thing I am slightly concerned about for Unity is the modern day storyline. I know the modern day storyline has always been a sort of sideshow, because every game's focus is on the memories that are being relived, not the people who are viewing them. But I personally thought the weakest part of Black Flag was the modern day storyline. The whole gimmick of you're the guy who's making the Assassin's Creed games, and it's like a chance for Ubisoft to throw in all these kind of side jokes, because that's where they work, and you can play the game through the eyes of the developer. And I thought that was so cheesy and painful. So for Unity, I hope they do something to continue on the main story, because they've kind of left it as a sort of afterthought after Desmond died. Spoiler alert. And I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there, because Abstergo is still in play. There could be a lot of opportunities for avenging the death of Warren Vidic. Kuno, they really haven't done anything. They just threw in a couple of teasers with her in the multiplayer side of it. that actually brings me on to another point, which is that I'm interested to see how Ubisoft are going to handle the multiplayer, because obviously the big thing about Unity is you've now got co-op Assassin's Creed for the first time, but they were always quite heavily innovative into the multiplayer aspect as well. It started off as a sideshow, but they've thrown quite a lot of resources in its way, so I'm interested in seeing how they're going to balance the relationship between co-op and multiplayer, because the multiplayer of Assassin's Creed is very good. I never played it for ages just because I thought Assassin's Creed was a single player game at heart, and multiplayer was just thrown in as a gimmick to keep people to keep people's retention after they'd finished the single player, which I guess you could argue it still is, but when you get down to it, the multiplayer is actually a very good. It's the only multiplayer I've ever really played where you have to think so much, and obviously that's not everyone's cup of tea. The whole you have to be constantly concentrating and looking at every single character that's walking around the screen to spot when they do something obvious. But it just works really well as an Assassin's Creed multiplayer, and I hope there'll be some kind of integration between the two systems, maybe, because I mean obviously they've tried some integration between the single player and the multiplayer, where achievements in the single player unlock various skins and stuff in the multiplayer. But now that they're bringing the single player into the co-op field, I wonder if they're thinking of possibilities for more integration, which would definitely be interesting. As for the sexism thing, I personally believe that Ubisoft isn't being sexist or anything by not having a female protagonist, because they've had strong female characters throughout the series, both in the past and in the present, and there are some technical limitations that obviously would discourage them from doing it. For example, if you play the Liberation kind of like mini DLC that came with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, you do play as a female in it, but it's obvious that was just shoehorned in, because you can see the areas where they would have to change the game dramatically to fit in a female character. Like for example, all the guards quote when you're playing that DLC, they say things like, "I see him over there, he's getting away, shoot the bastard," when it's a female. So it's obvious that they've just changed the character models, and that doesn't fit at all. It felt very basic and cheap and not very pleasant at all. That was the worst part of that DLC. So personally, I don't think they're not being sexist. It's clear that Ubisoft doesn't have a problem with female characters in the Assassin's Creed series, and there would be significant costs to switching the character just to change their animations and enemy responses and all that. So personally, I feel Ubisoft are getting way too much stick for their character design decisions, and overall I'm just feeling really optimistic for Unity. It looks like Ubisoft has turned the Assassin's Creed series around, and they're taking the feedback from when they made all these copycat games, and hopefully it will be a great series for the years to come. So this has been Rowan. I hope you enjoyed this little opinion video of mine, and if you want to, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to Play the Game Central for more. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.